God. Has any word in human history been more influential? Mankind has created religion after religion, written book after book, all in an effort to satisfy our quest for knowing God. Now, after many millennia, mankind is more at a loss to the nature of God. In fact, it appears that the tools we created to help us find God serve more as obstacles and hindrances. Those obstacles now stand between God and us. We extend to you an invitation to join Master Eric and Omkar for the weekly program Between God and Us every Sunday evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. exclusively on Sankhya television. Between God and Us. Knowledge to free your soul.
Sitaram, and welcome to the program Between God and Us. Today, episode 4 in the second season. And it is my pleasure once again to sit with Master Eric. Last week's topic was a bit heavy, and naturally we will continue along with the topics, but try to take little breaks in between to cover other topics as well. And today's topic, why man is changing religion. And here, well, I am sitting here with Master Eric to get some answers to that question. Once again, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Omkar. Glad to be here. And also, Sitaram, Assalamu Alaikum, Sairam. Good evening, everyone. So, Omkar, this is also a deep subject, but a different deep than what we did last week. Yeah. So I'll let you start.
Well, I think everybody knows by now that in between we have little chats.
Yeah.
And one thing that came up between us was, how man is changing religion and the extent, because I was asking you in the conversation that these scriptures are ancient. The rishis and munis and all, even the wise men of the biblical texts, they were great men beyond what we could understand. Even I cannot even begin.
Oh, their abilities was outlandish.
But you have modern people who, it is apparent they have very little understanding of their own self, but they want to change scripture for the modern times. They say, you have to get with the times. Religion has to get with the times. And I find it almost a laughable idea when the ancient scriptures are so in depth that nobody could even, I don't think anybody in the modern time could even write that scripture. But then now, why is it happening? Why do you think people feel the need to do that? And is it right?
Okay. First, we have to go back.
All right.
Okay. Now we got a reference. So you got Yusa, which is also between the Hebrew and the Abrahamic religion.
Right.
Okay. Scriptures was dictated. Then you had from God to the rishis and munis,
right,
the dictation. So what happened, it wasn't dictated at that time. It was given. Okay? And then they started writing it down. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, like the Sumerians, it was written down not with ink and paper or the different type of, some use ghost scan, whatever. But the Sumerians, they chiseled it in clay tablets. That way it could stay. It wouldn't warp, it wouldn't rot, and a lot of deciphering came from that. Now, I know what you're trying to say. A lot of young people are stating this. And they're confused. Because why would something say this, and then we're doing the opposite? Or we're making changes as we go. Now, what I believe, this is just me, that the rishis and munis, they weren't normal people. They were actually super gifted. And when this was spoken and told to them, and they started writing it. Remember, God knows the past, even before creation, to the end of creation. He knows what's going to happen, and He knows when it's going to happen. So, don't you think the rishis and munis already forethought that too? They had that gift. So when they started dictating or writing it down for records, for humanity, it would be right, fit for all times, clear through Kali Yuga, all the way down, which I want to do the show coming up, not next week, but I want to do about the 4 different ages. Okay, but nowadays, and even before us, there's been people who read the Bible, read the Quran, read XYZ. And they come up and say, my interpretation is X. Like, it could be better. Or we need to do this because of this reason. And they start modifying the techniques, the rituals, and that's in all faith. Okay? So what we were used to doing, they're not doing. So your question is, yes, it's man that's interfered, not God. Okay? Now, are the people today as wise as the rishis and munis? Or all the ancient beliefs? Within those beliefs, remember, before it was Arabic, it was Persian, the Persian writings.
Right.
So now, are the men today more wise than the first ones who actually wrote the Quran? No. Because they got it, Muhammad got it directly from Allah. Okay? In the Abrahamic religion, that's Abraham. Okay? Abraham got it direct. But you don't hear the Christians talk about the Abrahamic religion. Okay? And that was one of the founders for Christianity.
Right.
But why don't we look at the history? Where did our belief come from? So that's why when we sat down that day and we were deciding what to call the program, and between God and us is everything. There's every obstacle, every avenue that stands between us and God. And I'm a firm believer that God did not make man to be stupid. You could listen to something and that inner feeling inside of you saying, that don't sound right. All right? So the good person will start researching clear back. And clear back, they have the rituals, they have the teachings, everything. Then when you start reading that, you'll see the discrepancy between then and now. But the reason religions, now I want you to understand there's a big difference between religion and spirituality.
Right.
Spirituality has not changed. Religion has changed. That's why you're seeing a lot of the young people now starting to go towards, they're drawn towards what they call in the bookstores the New Age. It's more spiritual. It's not religion. Okay? The yogis, they're not religious. They're spiritual. The Hagoras, they're not religious. They're spiritual. Okay? Now they have their little rituals, but most of it, 90%, is all meditation.
Yeah.
Meditating out, getting the knowledge or whatever they need to receive. So, but nowadays, you hear the famous quote from the religious leaders, and you mentioned it. We have to go with the times. We have to update ourselves to go with the times. So what do you think that means?
To me, I think that's a pursuit in the material, not the spiritual. That's what I think that means. When I hear that, the reason I say it like that is because the material is always changing. That's the nature of material. But the spiritual is everlasting.
Correct. But who is drawn to who?
What do you mean?
Isn't humans drawn to material?
I think humans drawn to the material.
Correct. Now, so let's ask another question. In order to progress spiritually, it's like a step ladder, a long ladder going up. Right. And I did programs in the past. What are the 34 golden rules to reach where you need to go? That'll be a good one to do. Now, everyone has to have a religion as a basis. Okay?
Okay.
A base to come from.
Right.
Okay? Now, the leaders of where they go to, they have a job to do. And the job is to, one, educate you in the belief. Not just preach. Mm-hmm. Educate you. Take time to teach you. And some religions have rituals that they do. Like in Hinduism, you have your jap, you light your diya, you offer your offering, you throw your gel, you do hawan, you do puja. Okay? And that's all great, don't get me wrong. But that's for beginners. Okay. Now that same spiritual leader is supposed to take you to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. I'm not seeing it being done. Eventually, you will do your pujas, not with material things. You would end up doing mental worship through meditation. You could do everything you do in the physical world within the meditation realm. Yeah. Then from there, you go to the next step. So,
I remember the 5 stanzas, mental worship of Lord Shiva. The story is Pushpadanta had the ability to levitate and he lost the ability through some punishment. And he created the mental worship of Lord Shiva, which is a full puja mentally. And because it was written so beautifully and done so beautifully, he got back the ability to meditate.
The mental worship, in reality, is more accepted.
Now, there's going to be some religious leaders out here hearing me say that. Now, they know deep in their heart it's true. Why? It's more intimate. You have that total intimacy between you and God. You're not having people clanging pans in the background. You don't have people chatting and makoing everybody that's at the puja. You don't have people falling asleep in a church. You don't see people criticizing in the church what other people are wearing. Okay? Puja, prayers, no matter where you are, is supposed to be sacred. It's supposed to be intimate. And I said before, that's why my guru always told me, do not invite people to your actual puja. Do your puja and have people come after the puja to partake in the food. To actually, so you can feed them and everything else. Then the next thing, different negative attitudes that is within that area. It could hinder. It could hinder you by distracting you.
Yeah.
Okay?
I remember, what I was just thinking about was for the Christians, well, the Hindus could learn a lesson from it too. When Jesus had to really pray, when he was about to be persecuted, he went in the garden by himself to pray. He had his disciples, he could have done it, well, he's the Son of God, he could have prayed anywhere. But he went by himself in solitude in the garden to pray. Mm-hmm. So, and what happened there, if you really read the scriptures, Jesus knew who he was. Mm-hmm. But he still had a human side to him. And he was questioning. And then he ended up saying, God, if it's thy will, it will be done. So he had to overcome the emotional side of him to make sure it was carried out the way God wanted. And then he told the disciples, stand guard. Do not fall asleep. And they fell asleep. This is what I'm saying. Jesus himself knew he could not pray with the disciples around him. Yeah. He could not meditate with the disciples around him. The same thing I'm saying here. The same thing. Your time is intimate. Yeah. So now, I think your question was before also, the variations that we're seeing now going on. Like years ago, the tips of the pan leaf were never cut off for puja. Okay. But you're seeing it being done now. So the question is, where is that written? How did you come upon that decision, which I've already know, of doing this? If puja was laid out and there's procedures, how to do it, then why are we changing it now? Because we think we know more, and it's about impurities. Okay? But do we know more now? Because there's deities that live in the pan leaf. Right. And it's specifically written who lives where in the pan leaf. Right. And Mother Lakshmi resides on the tip. So you just cut she off. Before you do something, you have to research why it was in the first place. Yeah. And who lives in the pan leaf. Okay, that's why when you pick the leaves for puja, you try to get them with no defect. They have to be perfect, as perfect as possible. But people just pick, and now you end up with one with holes and XYZ, right? That's one. In some beliefs, they used to do when somebody died 40 days reading. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of that's scrapped now. They're not doing it. Why?
Now, the pressures of society is having a big effect on religions.
Yeah.
And the religions are trying to lean, to a certain extent, to please society, but the leaders are trying to balance as close as possible to where they're not infringing on the rights. But technically they are. So the question is, all the deviations we're seeing in Christianity, Hindu, Jewish, the only deviations is the exterior of the Muslim faith. The scripture, and they could boast about it, has never been deviated. But the techniques of what's done during a funeral and XYZ has been manipulated, but not the scripture. Okay? The Christian Bible is being rewritten God knows how many times. Okay, some are easier to read than others. But the more we try to make things more simple, don't you think we might be taking something away?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking something that when you stated it, that the religious leaders, the different religions, they are trying to tailor the rituals and religion to suit society. But that's the dumbest.
To try to balance it.
Yeah. But when you hear it being said out loud, it's the dumbest thing, the dumbest idea to do that, because society is made up of people.
Let's not say dumb.
Well,
let's say idiotic.
Yeah, idiotic, because society is made up of people who can't control their desires, can't control their emotions, no self-discipline or very little. Well, I talk about myself too, right? You know, like if I would get angry, I might cuss out somebody on the road or something. But I'm going to say how the scripture or the ritual should be done, and the Pandit or Imam, well, you just said the Muslims don't do it, but the Christian, the priest, is going to change what the wise have written to suit the idiot. That's basically what's happening.
But in most countries, like the U.S., we have a constitution.
Right.
Well, down here you have a constitution to a certain extent. And it states the same as the U.S. Freedom of religion. Okay, freedom. That doesn't mean the government is going to come in and tell you how to do your religion, how to conduct your rituals. Or they can't come in and say you are banned from practicing your religion. There in the States, in the Constitution, the government and religion will always remain separate. Okay? So this is where we're going to get into another subject on different type of religions. And even though people don't look at it as a religion, Satanism is a religion.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into that. So the question is, are they bending to society, or is society bending to that? Because now they've approved it in some of the schools, which we're going to go over.
Yeah.
So,
because I was telling you, I saw
right.
videos about it, news reports where they have Satanist displays in government houses.
and they're going to have after-school courses.
Yeah.
Now, it's not mandatory, but a lot of people are up in air about it because of what it truly stands for. Okay? But again, before you can say something against something, shouldn't you read it and try to understand? Because you got to know what you're against.
Yeah.
You're not against, most people are against what they hear another person say.
Right.
No. You've got to research. So Are we heading, humanity, are we heading down the right road now? With all these alterations, everybody puts their 2 cents in and said, no, I think we should do it this way.
I personally don't think humanity is headed on the right road. But when you think, according to the Hindus, what they teach, it is inevitable.
No, it's going to happen.
Because we talk about Kali Yuga and what was written that happens in Kali Yuga. I don't know if it's like God predicting, well, this is human nature to end up this way and to go further down, or is it some universal, let's say, like gravity, right? Like this is the way it goes. I don't know.
Okay. I want you to look at something.
Right.
When something's put out and it's written, and it's been millenniums, I mean, we're talking many. If you just look at the Vedas,
Yeah.
that's way back. Okay? Now, the Bible, the Quran, and all the earlier religions, not earlier, but later, latter,
Right.
it's new.
Yeah.
It's 2,000 years or less. Okay? So the other ones can predate 3,000, 4,000 BCE. Now, I think what you were getting at the beginning was, what was the thinking level of those people back then? Was English taught to put all the terminologies within the writing?
No.
Exactly. When you decipher, when people find the Dead Sea Scrolls and things like that, there's parts missing out of it. When they unroll it, you'll see gaps where it's missing. So now the human in this century or last century has to decipher and guess what is in between these blank areas.
Yeah.
Then people decide what is real and what is not. So let me give you an example. In Christianity, and I mentioned it before, in the Council of Nicaea, it's between 314 and 317 AD. The Council of Nicaea, ran by Constantine. And Constantine was in charge then.
Yeah.
Okay? With the Romans and everything. And they decided what was real and what was not. So they pulled those books out. Because you were asking me the other day that there's so many gaps in the Bible and other religions, right?
Yeah.
Like when Cain came upon a big city. Well, who were they?
Yeah.
Well, don't talk about it. Because they pulled out the book of Enoch. And I have the list of the 27 books, and I've got most of them. So I do want to go in it. But man has interfered from the beginning of time. Now, each generation thinks they're smarter than the last generation.
Yeah.
Now, society now, because of the political pressures of certain things in society, they are wanting to change what is accepted in the religious beliefs.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, if you, as a spiritual leader, and let's say you truly believe in the scriptures that you have, should you deviate the rules of the scriptures to benefit people to come to your institution? Or do you stick with what's written and teach why you are doing what you're doing? Otherwise, that means society and the religious leaders today has to come together and totally rewrite the scriptures.
Yeah. There's something else. Well, we were discussing it before. And because we were talking about the Valmiki Ramayana and how the I will say that the Ramcharitmanas was Tulsidas changing the Ramayana, the Valmiki Ramayana. And then you were telling me, well, the Valmiki Ramayana was not the first Ramayana, so then Valmiki might have changed that as well.
An addition, like an addition.
Like a revised edition.
But what I'm trying to say with that, if a person, spiritual leader, goes with a Valmiki,
Right.
and trying to tell normal people,
Right.
isn't that more factual
Yeah.
than the current ones that they're reading now?
Yeah.
Right.
But just
And it's
wait.
written in a different way for more of a higher scale to understand. All right. So, but it's very factual based.
Right.
All right. So, what are you trying to say? Is if they read the Valmiki, is that the real one? Or is that been translated and through translation we've lost some things?
Things might have been lost, but things might have been omitted purposely. Or changed.
Bingo!
Or
Just
changed.
like I talked about with Constantine.
But part of my question was that, well, the answer is that to understand the facts of the Valmiki Ramayana. Now, I don't know anything about the Bible, so I don't know what was left out and facts. You have to understand, for example, who the Nagas are. Hanuman's race, well, whatever they say Hanuman's race was, right? You have Garuda appearing in the Valmiki Ramayana. You have to understand his race, because I thought he was the only one of his kind, because he had a brother, right? Mm-hmm. So then where did he come from? And all these things have to be fact-based answers.
This is where you could read a story.
Right.
You could read the book. But in reality, there's gaps all through it.
Right.
Because you could say, Lord Garuda, right? But like you said, where'd he come from?
Right.
What's his purpose? And his purpose is not just to fly Lord Vishnu around.
Right.
So the teachings of going in depth in each one of these areas, like a pie chart,
Yeah.
right, has to be done before you start going into the whole story.
Right.
Right? Then they'll say, oh yeah, Lord Garuda, I know about him. I know about this. I know about this. Right? And so, now the other day, I saw where a scholar wrote, and I'm going to research it, so people, I haven't researched it yet, but he's stating that in the Vedas, there's nothing about Nandi, mention of Nandi in the Vedas.
Okay.
That came after. Okay. And then it came out after even some of the other books.
Right.
That he was the most devoted and he was Lord Shiva's vehicle. So, and then some say Mother Durga came after a certain period.
Right.
And they gave the time frames. But I don't want to give the time frames of things until I actually research it.
Right.
Right? But then we have so many different stories about the same thing. So many different variations of the same one. And people get confused. So then they're asking, well, which one's the right one? Some spiritual leaders say, well, I referenced it from this. And the other one will say, well, I referenced it from this. Which one's right? This is what we have to look at. Or who was the author? That's another thing they say.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with it. The author is human, isn't he? Couldn't he make mistakes in his interpretation? So, this is why some beliefs has an advantage and a disadvantage. Some beliefs just have one book.
Yeah.
So it's simple.
Yeah.
But it's a disadvantage because you're not getting all the information about that belief in one book.
Right.
But for the person that's coming, it's simpler. Look at Hinduism. God, you can't count the amount of books that is about the history, about God, about what happened. Right? There's a lot. And then you look at Buddhism. It's not just one book. Egyptian, not just one book. There's 6 major books that comprise. And when we go into that story, I'll give the names of the books. Okay? So, interpretation. So, if you watch the movie, let's say you're sitting with my wife, you're sitting with your mom and dad, and you got about 5 other people watching the movie. Do you know their interpretation of the movie will deviate from yours?
Yeah.
It's interpretation. Who was the good guy? Who was the bad guy? What was the moral of the story? Okay, it's just like when you give 10 people, or let's say 20 people, you stand them up in a row, and you whisper into the first one. Do you know that whole story is going to change by the time it gets to the end?
Yeah.
Okay? The same thing through generations as we're going through. So, you ask at the beginning, is that technically wrong? Of rewriting or deviating? My answer is yes. Before you deviate or change something, I think there should be a huge debate between all the top people of that belief, not the institution, and try to clarify and come to reason why certain things should not be changed or could be changed. But then those people that are very knowledgeable will say it can't be changed because this was done by these people. And they were spiritually gifted, big time.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, I think about it like this, right? As an example, look like in the Muslim faith. Allah spoke to the Prophet Muhammad. And you want to come now in the modern age, they're not doing it. So that's why I'm using the example. You can't change that. That is God spoke to a man and you want to put your little... You know who is you to change?
Remember, God knows all.
Right.
So what he says should be effective throughout the whole history of humans.
Yeah.
Okay? So, now, it wasn't dictated that throughout different time periods of humanity, there is an option to amend these scriptures.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't give you that capability. So, Again,
But then is it a sign then, if for the people out there, if you are following a spiritual leader, no matter the religion, who changes the scripture, is it a sign that that person doesn't really have knowledge of the scripture? Because if you have the...
I think we have a lot of puppets.
Right.
So somebody will come from somewhere that they deemed is higher up in their faith.
Right.
And he just shows up and explains to everybody, this needs to be done this way. Mm-hmm. Well, where did he get it? Where's the factual base? Where's the scholar discussions?
Right.
Where is all this? So we have a lot of puppets, right? In every religion.
Right.
All right? So when we really look at it from a layman's point of view, can you see why people are confused? And young people aren't stupid.
Yeah.
So now you're starting to talk. Now I think you're starting to understand my statement 2 programs ago. When I said, when I meditate, they always told me up there, get your book. Read your book. Try to understand the book. And then close the book and never go back in the book. Take what you learned from the book and start your spiritual path, your journey. Why did they say that? Because all the deviation man puts in them, and he takes away from them. So if you learn the base,
Yeah.
and most of the base of all religions are about the same,
Right.
okay, you close the book. You don't have to buy a new book later or an updated book. Take what you learned and apply it to your life and start walking that path.
Yeah.
And now go spiritual with your religion's base. But people aren't doing that, Omkar.
Yeah.
But they will eventually. They
You know,
will.
that reminds me of... No, I went to Presbyterian primary school, right?
Okay.
So that's where most of my exposure to the Christian faith comes from. So I remember from primary school days where I'm paraphrasing here, but it's you build your house on sand, it'll fall. You build your house on your rock, which is Jesus. I can't remember exactly. That's long. And it'll remain sturdy, right? Basically, that's the idea. If you think about it, like you use your religion as the foundation
That's what I've been saying.
to build your house.
Correct.
Now, nobody talks about their foundation in their house, right? Like you build a building. You're not going to tell people about your foundation. You have the walls, you decorate, you have your fancy decoration, the roof, the windows, and you show that off. Which you could call that spiritual. What you say, you read your book, you understand your book, you put down the book. Your book is the foundation.
Correct.
You put down your foundation.
And you should
And
have
you
a
build your
sturdy,
house.
steady, solid foundation.
Yeah, and you build your house on the foundation.
Correct.
Now now this is the point is that people want to go on like they preachy now where they want to talk about the scripture. But the scripture is your foundation. The same way you don't talk about the foundation in your house. Don't talk about the scripture, use that to build on, and people will see what you built on.
Now you look, the spiritual leader you have, whatever religion,
Right.
should now take you up to the next level.
Yeah.
It's not being taught, Omkar. It's not being taught. You're still doing the same old thing over and over and over. Okay? There's layers.
Yeah.
There's a ladder you have to climb. Okay? And if you don't climb that ladder, your journey is going to be more difficult.
Yeah.
So...
That's like you build a foundation and you just pitch a tent and you live on the foundation alone.
There you
I'm
go.
not building a house on top of that.
Correct. But is this being done and taught? No. Okay? If we keep spinning top in mud, how far can you reach? You can't reach nowhere because you're still spinning top in mud.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's why they say, now they're not saying don't ever go back in the book. What they're saying, don't keep quoting from the book and you haven't applied it to your life.
Yeah.
Okay, that's hypocrisy. All right? So the theory that they were telling me is super sound. It's super sound. Nobody can come in and tell you otherwise. Because they can't say, well, our religion says, no, that religion we're talking about is the solid base foundation that we are expanding up.
Yeah.
Right? So nobody can go against that. You know, but young people today, they're lost. A lot of them don't really believe in the religion they're in. You know, and it's sad. Because what's going to happen in 20 more years, Omkar, if we've lost 50% of the young people already in every religion? What's going to happen 20 years from now? You know, this world is going to be in a whole different ballgame to live in. We're seeing how negative it's getting now. Yeah. Just with crime, the way people react, the hatred, the anger they have in them. What's it going to be 20 years from now?
You know, you were telling me something. I can't remember if we discussed it in between recordings or if it was in the program. But where humans, like God built humans in a way where intuitively we know when we hear something, if it's right or wrong.
Correct. That's what I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah. So that now the young people, it's not that they turn away from religion, but probably they're hearing something where inside it's like, you know, that not feeling right. It not it don't feel good when that goes down inside and you process it. And that's why they're turning away, because so the spiritual leaders, religious leaders are changing for the times because they're thinking that's what they got to do for the young people.
To bring them in.
But when the young people hearing it now, it goes down and it doesn't feel good. With intuitively the way God designed us, and that's why they turn it that way. But if the religious leaders understood their religion in a more complete way and really brought out the essence of the truth of the religion, then it would sit well with the people where they would engage the religion more.
See, and I hate to bring it up because people say I'm stereotyping people, but I'm not. However people want to live, that's their own business.
Right.
That's their free will of choice. The only time I have an opinion is when scriptures say one thing,
right,
and you as a spiritual leader does the opposite.
Right.
That confuses young people. So let me give you an example. Even though in society and today, two men kissing, two women kissing. When I grew up, that would never be shown on TV. But now it's everywhere, right? So now society, I'm not saying it's wrong for them. I'm just saying as a spiritual leader, a lot of religions state that is forbidden. So the young person, they know it says that. But then if the spiritual leader is that, isn't that contradicting what the scripture says? Because some of them say they're damned to hell. So,
and we're not talking about these scriptures in terms of what is you could read now, but
even before.
When it was the ancient original scriptures. Yeah.
You know, so this is where young people can't understand. And then in today's religions, money has become a huge factor in the preaching. And I have numerous people every week come in here and say every sermon they talk about, they're talking, give more tithing, give more tithing, give more tithing. That should not be the priority of what is being discussed.
Yeah.
People should give what they can give or what they want to give. Don't dictate how much they have to give. And then you're asking for more. You know, and then we'll do that too, way in the future. That there are 4 tithings in the Christian Bible, and not one of them apply to today. It does not apply to outside the boundaries of Israel. So,
All right.
and it says that in there.
Okay.
Even the Galileans were exempt from the 10% because they lived outside the boundary. It was only for the 12 tribes of Israel, which the main tribe that would get that would be the Levites. So what I'm trying to say, just because it says that, you're applying it everywhere. So I think clarification needs to come out.
Yeah.
And so when you came up with at the beginning, people say we need to change with the times. That's a half-truth statement. The half-truth is, if it says 10%, but then in the same writings it says applies to this area only. So they're wanting to change that to apply everywhere.
Right.
Okay? And they don't talk about the 4 tithings. They only talk about 1. So I think we need to clarify that on the air, because we just don't talk Hinduism.
Right.
We'll talk every belief.
Yeah.
So
We have 9 minutes.
9 minutes.
8 minutes.
So what's the solution?
To change in scriptures in modern times?
Or should we?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I don't think we should deviate for what's been passed down. So now here's how you could really understand. I'll give the Christians as a reference. You have the King James Bible, which is the most commonly known. It's got 66 books in it.
Yeah.
Now, take that King James and refer to the Torah, the Jewish Bible that Jesus confirmed was the truth.
Right.
So now you'll start seeing deviations in the Old Testament from the Torah to that. Now go further. Go research what is in the Codex, which is the source of the Bible. It's night and day. So when you hear something, research back. Technology gives you that ability now
Right.
to research back, and you could get it translated. You could use AI if you want to.
Yeah.
It'll translate it and tell you what is in that. So now you're seeing from that time to this time how much difference is between the source and the one you're reading now.
Yeah.
You could do that between every religion. Because remember, there are first editions, second editions of almost everything.
Yeah.
So what does the first one say? See, this is where people, in my view, needs to not be lazy and just believe everything you hear. You need to research.
Yeah. I look at it a little different, but in the same vein, which is because I'm Hindu based, right? Not a Hindu, but Hindu based. Where like when they read these stories about all the Puranas and all the stories and the accounts of people who did their sacrifice and they did their penance and they did their rituals in order to get boons, in order to achieve certain goals, to have certain events take place. To read about the discipline and the sacrifice in order to get these goals and the type of goals, the type of boons that they asked for and got, and the type of people that they became. To change that to suit the modern times where you're just praying to get a car or you're praying to get a nice house or a job, it looks like, let's say you're abusing something powerful then. You have something so powerful, but you want to change it to the modern times to get something so trivial.
Or to make it easier on you.
Yeah.
So that's why the word wealth in spirituality
Right.
does not mean money or material things.
Yeah.
It means knowledge. So, you'll hear people do a reading. And when they do the reading, they say, those who participate, those who are involved, or those who listen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's different terminologies. All their desires will be fulfilled. What does that mean to a regular human being? Oh God,
Clothes and car.
I can get my car. I can get this, I can get that. That's not what it means. Because in spirituality, aren't we supposed to stay as far away from our desires as possible?
Yeah.
Aren't we supposed to be in control of our desires when it comes to worldly things?
Yeah.
So what's the terminology mean then? This is where training and knowledge comes in. Because I don't think God would ever say that, or whoever was involved in that edition.
Oh, it's simply like this, right? When they wrote the Vedas or they wrote the Bible, they didn't have cars or people or big houses. A lot of people lived in the open, right?
They were very humble. They were poor.
Yeah. So the scriptures and the prayers and the mantras and all these things.
All that is to uplift you, but not with worldly things. So I know we're getting pretty close to the time we have to end, but everybody that's watching out there today, we've spun this thing at least 10 times. We would like to hear from you, your opinion, or what you think. It's all confidential. What's your view of whatever belief you're in? Do you think the scriptures should be altered, or the rituals of how you do things being altered in today's period? Or should it stay what was originally dictated? I would love to find out different opinions. And you could contact Sankhya, or you can contact us via WhatsApp. And that is 1-868-354-4459 for me. And then also call Sankhya and give it. They're not going to say who gave what or the answer. I'm curious. And are you seeing contradictory things being done in your faith by what the scripture says, but what's being done? I would like to know that also. Because it's time that we just don't agree with what everyone says. We take our time and learn and research and find out from yourself what could be the truth, what should be done, and how. But Obakar, it's been great being with you on this program. Maybe we've got people thinking a little different now of what it's really meant to be, the scriptures.
I hope so.
You know, and then one question was asked to me, I got about 1 minute, the other day. They said, have you noticed that most of the religions, not all the scriptures are based just about humans? It's not really based deeply outside of the earth. Hinduism has some, and so does Buddhism, but most of the religion is earth-based. And then you have to ask why. Is it because man only sees earth? Man only knows earth back then?
Well, I was thinking, suppose people change it, like the way certain books were taken out of the Bible.
And then we didn't know about the other hundreds of millions of galaxies that's in the universe too.
Yeah.
Their scriptures are probably different from ours. There has to be intelligent out there.
Yeah.
It's a test. But anyhow, we'll go into that later about why is Earth Earth? And what is the purpose of Earth?
Okay.
But it's been a pleasure being with you, Omkar. And everybody, it's been a pleasure being with you. And please have a very safe week. See you next week.
God. Has any word in human history been more influential? Mankind has created religion after religion, written book after book, all in an effort to satisfy our quest for knowing God. Now, after many millennia, mankind is more at a loss to the nature of God. In fact, it appears that the tools we created to help us find God serve more as obstacles and hindrances. Those obstacles now stand between God and us. We extend to you an invitation to join Master Eric and Omkar for the weekly program Between God and Us every Sunday evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. exclusively on Sankhya television. Between God and Us. Knowledge to free your soul.
Sankhya Television, the first Hindu TV station in Trinidad and Tobago, and your #1 choice for cultural, inspirational, and spiritual